At Data Futurology, we love creating events that can help you overcome the challenges that you're facing in your work, in your organizations right now. So I wanted to quickly tell you about a free webinar around accelerating MLOps. This is on the 26th of July at 11 a.m. We're going to be sitting with Romina Sharifpour from AWS, and she's going to tell us about how carsales.com.au was able to use their SageMaker platform to improve the creation, deployment, and operationalization of their machine learning models. So come join us for that really exciting webinar. For more details, please check datafuturology.com/events. Thanks so much. Hope to see you there.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project focus, data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au.
Hi, this is Felipe Flores. Welcome to Data Futurology. Today we have a super special guest, Amia Odell. She is the GM of Data Science from Sportsbet. Mia, we're so happy to have you on the show. I'm very excited to pick your brain. How are you going?
Thanks so much, Felipe. I'm glad to be here. Doing well, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I thought to kick things off, can you tell us about your role and your remit, and then we'll take it from there?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the general manager of data science at Sportsbet. I work in the one of the broader data teams. We have three main data teams: data science, data platforms, and commercial analytics. Who all sit in different parts of the business. Very important for us to keep very well aligned and keep in touch constantly.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And what are the three parts of the business that have those teams?
So commercial analytics falls under the finance division, and data platforms falls under the tech division, and data science falls under product division.
Perfect. Super interesting.
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's good. It's good because it's kind of like closer to where the capability is and the need is, but I'm sure that the servicing happens across the organization in terms of where the stakeholders are. It's an interesting model.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've worked in a previous role. I've been in a much smaller company responsible for all three of those, and we're of course then consolidated under under one area. Which had been product at one point, finance at another. But I actually think it works quite well as long as the teams are quite well aligned, and if they're working together and have shared objectives and are competing or fighting, then I think that actually works really well. Sportsbet's been a really collaborative organization, which I think is a requirement to have that much kind of fragmentation between the different parts of the data value chain.
Yeah. No, Sportsbet is definitely a quite a mature organization from an analytics perspective. At least from the outside, definitely seems that way. And how did you find it coming in? I think you've been in the role maybe just a year or a year and a half.
A year and a quarter. Yeah, actually a year and a quarter now. It's been really good. It's a very complex business. Data is very much part of what we do as a bookmaker. We actually build our own pricing models. Not every online wagering company does that. They often outsource. So we've been essentially building data science models, machine learning models to predict probabilities of events for the things that our customers can wager on for a very long time. It's only been, I guess, a little bit more recent that we're involved in more sort of traditional machine learning data science problems focused around kind of customer. So it's probably been maybe 5 years since we really started diving deep into the customer side of data science and machine learning, which I think has given us a bit of a leg up on many companies in our journey. I wouldn't say though that we've had necessarily. Well, I'll put it this way. I think we have the good problem now of having a lot of machine learning models in production, but not necessarily a lot of ML ops in place to make those continue to run effectively and make those continue to predict well.
Very interesting challenge coming ahead. How are you tackling that challenge at the moment?
Yeah, well, look, I guess first is awareness. I mean, not everyone, in the business realizes that machine learning models are different than typical software. Mm-hmm. It's been, I guess, a case of finding the instances where models have failed for reasons that are typically controlled for by MLOps, by documenting those, communicating those, highlighting those, and also just kind of a general education piece. Like a lot of people think that machine learning models are, normal software models. I like to use an analogy. I think they're more like gardening than building maintenance. Maybe I think typical software tends to function a bit more reliably and repeatably. Machine learning models, as I'm sure the audience here knows, are very much more prone to needing a bit of tender love and care, a bit of phosphorus for this plant, a bit of shade for that one, a little bit of water here, and it's all time varying. But I think there's a strong case to be made that as a business where we are now, we have a large number of machine learning models in production, but we don't really have the systems and platforms to automate the care and maintenance of those models, which is now forcing us into choosing between ignoring those sorts of problems and building new things.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a tension between being between a rock and a hard place. Sure. And what's your approach going forward to ease some of that pressure or tension?
Yeah, so as I said, Sportsbet's a really collaborative organization. So the way that we're tackling it is with some data science, machine learning, MLOps expertise, and a dedicated team of machine learning engineers who will be focused more on building the platforms and the systems to support what we do, rather than single kind of deployments, single machine learning model deployments. We really do think there are economies of scale for us, given the number of models that we've built, the number of models that we are planning to build. So I think the best way for us to tackle that is a collaborative approach where a team of machine learning engineers working in the data platforms team are well embedded within the tech organization, and they're guided by the data science views of basically what the backlog should look like, what the vision for an ML platform should look like.
Nice. Yeah, that collaboration is definitely key there. You guys are doing it so well. And I know that as part of this, you are growing the team, or the team is growing quite a bit. How did you come to that realization, and how is it going?
Yeah, it's going well. I mean, it's obviously a challenge to hire in this environment. We're growing from about 20 people when we started the year to about 35 by the end of the year. We're about halfway through the year, and we're about halfway through that hiring.
Amazing.
But it's not just in data science that we're hiring. We're also hiring heavily in the data platforms, data engineering space, including a number of machine learning engineers to help us build the sort of platforms with the sort of governance that we're looking for. But yeah, it's also hiring in our analytics function as well. So there's a really big focus on, I guess, growing the business and growing it in a real kind of customer-facing, value-added kind of way. And the data functions have been probably the biggest I guess, beneficiary of the desire to grow the business in this way.
Yeah, that's really good. What type of challenges have you seen in the past around scaling teams? And what type of things do you think people should be looking out for when growing that much, almost doubling the team?
Yeah. Look, it's a real challenge. Like, in a previous business, I grew. It was the basically joined a startup, and by the time I left, my team was bigger than the business was when I had joined.
Wow.
So I grew a data analytics function from 0 to 30 data scientists, data engineers, and analysts. Wow. That was a sort of very different environment than, say, taking a kind of medium-sized business in sports betting and growing that from 20 to 35. So it really depends what sort of environment you're in. Like, I gave a talk at a recent conference that you guys hosted, and just on that subject. And I found it really, really hard to come up with some kind of underlying or overarching principles about scaling data teams. Like, it can really be very different in very different circumstances. I think the one thing that was extremely powerful in both situations was really to work with the team to come up with a strong vision that allows us to kind of band together for something when it became less about us as individuals and more about what the team was working toward. It really kind of made some of the challenges of scaling disappear. Like, some of those challenges are, when you're the only data scientist in a business, you have a very large remit. You have, the opportunity to work on quite a variety of problems. As you scale up, you need to decide, will such and such data scientists be responsible for this, for that? When that one data scientist grows to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, there are a lot of tricky, things to discuss. And, as you scale up a team that much, often you're layering up as well. So sometimes some people, may be interested in leadership, some aren't. But, there are times when, maybe people feel like they're passed by in that scaling of the data team. I guess the one kind of enduring constant, for me, has been really to get the team to band around that vision, which makes it a lot simpler when when there are some kind of tricky conversations and some tricky situations around the kind of organizational aspect of scaling.
Yeah. I agree, and I definitely want to. We might jump in there now, actually, because one of the things that I've seen that I've noticed is in teams that I've had when we've grown through periods of high growth, sometimes people get uncomfortable by the changing landscape and the fact that you now do have to assign areas of responsibility, and sometimes that leads to a bit of turnover. Is that something that you've seen, or how do you mitigate that?
Yeah, look, I think, in addition to that vision, I think another thing that's been pretty helpful in my experience in scaling data teams has really been to, focus on finding really smart, talented, ambitious people, but people who don't bring a large amount of ego, people who want to work really collaboratively. I think that's been really, really key in making sure that we don't lose people. That no one really cares that one area is theirs, no one's sort of territorial. That's a bit of a challenge when you're trying to scale a team, because it means sometimes you have to pass up on people who are exceedingly smart, clearly very passionate and very, very talented. But yeah, once in a while, you've got to pass on someone because maybe you have a feeling that they're not going to be as collaborative as you require in while scaling.
Yeah, so true, and that's always a hard, a tough call at the time, but it's a type of decisions that just provide benefits for such a long time.
For sure. And there's definitely a lot of pressure to hire quickly. When you've been given resources in an organization, you want to make good by those. And oftentimes this is the way planning cycles and budgets go. If you don't get there, you might not have those resources in budget next year.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting problem. And I take a machine learning kind of data science lens. There are false positives and false negatives, and true positives and false negatives, and they all have different costs. And you're trying to you're trying to optimize for kind of some overall metric of the team succeeding, even if you're not necessarily hiring as quickly as you'd like.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good flag to put on the ground and a stake on the ground and to stand by that. That's great. I wanted to ask you how, now that you've worked in data analytics over a few different industries in your career, how have you found the change of industry, those transition points? How has that been for you so far?
For me personally, it's something that I really enjoy. Like I really enjoy the learning curve of a new organization, of a new industry. I spent about 10 years working in the mining industry, originally starting back before a time when there were data scientists at all. Found that, I guess in the early days, I guess I was fairly early on kind of latching onto this term called data science, and found myself pushing quite a lot for this idea and being able to use data science as an organization. A few years passed, and found myself I guess a little bit disenfranchised. Disenfranchised. That's not quite the right word, but a little bit I guess. Feeling frustrated that in a mining context, it was so hard to use machine learning and to deploy machine learning for the simple kind of physical reason that it's a physical industry, digging things up, putting it on trains. There are so many regulations, safety regulations involved, in addition to just the physical realities of, making changes. So I got really interested in the idea of, trying to move to an industry where, there are less impediments to putting machine learning into production. And that's really just, the digital domain in online app sort of stuff. In particular, I thought that a customer domain, high frequency, high interaction customer domain would, be the most, I guess, ripe for being able to work in data and build good machine learning models. I would compare and contrast something like an online gaming app or online wagering versus something like mortgage lending or insurance. Both are, digital enterprises. You can collect data. The touch points within the insurance industry or mortgages and the like are very few and far between. Somebody's not engaging with their super app every week necessarily, or every month or whatever. So I really wanted to move into an area and an industry where there was an opportunity for I guess a lot of data that I thought you could actually make an impact with data science.
That is really clear, well-structured thinking. Sort of your analytical strength is coming through in that decision and that analysis of what type of organization would be a really great place to work, when that it would be digital, high interaction with the customer, something that they could access and that they would access all the time, high pace. That sounds really great. So leveraging your analytical mind, I was going to ask you what you said you enjoyed the learning curve of joining a new organization. What are the things that you look for, or the things that you seek to understand early on when you join an organization? Are there any particular like, do you have any frameworks in your mind of information that you're trying to fill, or there anything in particular that you're trying to understand first that then makes you feel comfortable that you're like, okay, now I'm understanding this organization. I feel like I can start taking the next steps.
Yeah, I guess. Like, do you mean from the perspective of like prior to joining or after joining?
Between prior to joining to just joining, sort of in the early days of the organization.
Yeah. Look, I guess actually now that thinking about it a bit more, it's probably about the same. Like I think the structure of the data teams matters a fair bit. As we spoke about earlier, in order for I would say data to work well in general in an organization, it either needs to be sort of consolidated or if split across different areas of the business. You really need a lot of collaboration, a lot of trust. So, look, I mean, one of the key things, for me prior to joining an organization was to actually speak to the leaders of the various teams that are involved in the data. Value life cycle, just to get a sense that everyone was aligned and everyone was pushing for the same thing. It's very, very much the sense that I got from my in my current role at Sportsbet. Look, I think that was
that's a super important point. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, because I agree that when you have so many, or when you have a few data teams throughout the organization, at first glance, it would signal, or it could signal, that the organization is either very immature in the data journey or very mature.
Yeah.
As in like they're just starting and haven't figured it out, or they've got this like organized, orchestrated machine that's working. So jumping in to understand which one is critical.
Yep, for sure. It's an interesting point. I've not really considered it from that perspective, but I can see how that's a typical kind of journey from from new efforts in data science and analytics, etc.
Yeah. And then when you start in the organization, are there things that you look to understand first? Is there anything that when you walk in, start the role in the first couple of months, you go, okay, I need to nail down this about the business?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess there's a lot of the along the lines of like typical advice to start in any new role. There's that stuff, but I think it's really useful from a data science angle and machine learning angle to be able to porpoise, and porpoising kind of just means being able to swim at the top. Dolphins spend most of their time at the surface, but occasionally to be able to dive deep into the ocean. And I think that's important in data science as well. An organization like Sportsbet, when I joined, had already had 20 plus models in production. Which means you can't become familiar with all of them. In a prior role, when I was there from the start, I knew all of our models, from the get-go. But you just can't do that when you're joining an organization that's quite mature in this space. So it was really important, for me to be able to porpoise, to dive deep into particular models to get a decent general sense for how things work in detail.
Yeah, that's great. And I gotta say, I love your analogies. I think that they really bring to life the clarity of your thinking. It's great. Like when you were talking about the models as models in production as a garden, that they all need different things and how to tend to them. And now talking about leadership roles as a dolphin in the sea. That's like, I love it. That's great.
That garden analogy is kind of interesting. Like I actually have the real lived experience of having my wife and I really gotten into gardening and ending up with over 100 different potted plants, and feeling the weight of trying to keep those alive was really challenging.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I don't have what they call a green thumb at all. I don't think my wife does either. But one of my daughters is super interested in plants. So we're now finding that we're like planting stuff and trying to develop them, trying to keep them alive. And it's been it's been an interesting journey. So I'm definitely going to be taking lessons from there. So yeah, no, thank you for that. I wanted to see if we could jump into some of your thoughts around MLOps. And maybe if you can help us by providing a structure or an overview of MLOps capabilities, I guess, in general. Maybe we can start there and then talk about what the journey could look like for organizations. But if we start with discussing a little bit about MLOps from an overview perspective.
Yeah, I mean, MLOps is not a term that everyone in most organizations are familiar with. I found a good way to get people to really get it pretty quickly is by talking about machine learning offense and machine learning defense. That's an analogy that sticks very well at Sportsbet, which is obviously a very kind of sports-oriented organization. I think ML offense and defense explains pretty well in general what we're trying to do. Now they're not perfectly distinct ideas because as as the old expression goes, I think it's the best offense is a good defense. I think you can actually kind of say the opposite of that as well. But yeah, I mean, ML offense to me is just making sure that you've got the ability to tackle a broad range of different kinds of machine learning problems in different situations. So that might be batch models that get run daily. That might be serving API requests related to credit card fraud live on your app. So there's breadth, and then there's depth. Then there's also things like time to market. I see that as an important factor in ML offense. ML defense is a lot newer to most people. They don't necessarily have a good understanding of that, but it's really just about making sure that your existing models continue to operate well, and that your data scientists are notified when something is amiss or not going well. ML defense also includes, hey, are we introducing any risk in our governance processes? So there are things like defensively speaking, we need to make sure that our models are all working ethically and responsibly. I take that as the kind of starting point for rolling out MLOps in an organization and just helping people understand what it is that we're trying to achieve.
I love that. That is great. Thank you. And tell me what your thoughts are that in MLOps, sometimes people focus on the technological capabilities that are required to be able to have champion or retraining of models, champion and challenger approaches, monitoring, deployment, and I guess my question is, beyond the technical, beyond the technological component required to enable MLOps, what else do you see as some key parts of MLOps?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously there's things like governance. There's making sure that we're not using PII in our models, or if there's a legitimate need that we're documenting that heavily. But there's also just simple things like release processes. Is there a non-data scientist involved in the release process? Is there a business owner assigned for a particular model? We've as we've kind of gone down this journey, we've realized how powerful it is. And it sounds like a simple thing, but to have a business owner both assigned for a model and as part of the development lifecycle. So just being able to, even when there are times that a model is being released or redeployed with no kind of, customer-facing sort of implications. It's been really powerful just as a collaboration tool to make sure that the people that we're building our models for internally, our stakeholders internally, are aware and bought into what we're doing at a detailed level. We've seen great benefit from doing that where we've done that. We've not kind of exhaustively migrated all of our kind of historical models to a new release process. But one of the advantages that we've seen from a less technical perspective is simply to have our stakeholders be much more in tune with what's going on in the models that we're building.
Yeah, that's really good. So yeah, it sounds like having processes around it from what you were saying, having processes in around MLOps, having governance, the involving stakeholders, all really critical components from my point of view, and I think. And I want to get your thoughts on this. That one of the things that surprised me when I got into leadership positions in data science and analytics, and I think something that I think trips up some people is the amount of collaboration that's needed across the organization, and the amount of collaboration that as a leader that you have to drive in order to get all the components working well together. And I think a great example of what you just mentioned is having a business owner for a model. I think that's phenomenal. That's super powerful. What would you say to people that might feel that that approach is like taking organizational clout away from them, because then they might not feel as like, oh, I'm the owner of the model, it's my model, that they're kind of like decentralizing the ownership of the model. What would you say to somebody that's taking that different approach of trying to almost like hog all the models and all the data?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is probably just part of the maturity curve. Like, when a data science function or a data scientist are new. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can deploy models without any of that. I just am convinced. I believe at this point that whilst it is a bit of a change in the way that a lot of data scientists and data science teams work, I think long term it creates much more of a positive impact. Now, I'm not saying that in a mature organization where you're deploying, you might be redeploying versions of models every day, that every change necessarily needs to go through a business owner. I think it's important to find the right balance between flexibility and independence in data science, and between that and being kind of well in touch and well in tune with the stakeholders. So what we've come up with is basically a way to triage. Okay, well, what changes do or don't need to go through that process. And at a minimum, our stakeholders, the business owners, is informed when a model is deployed. But we want to have clear guidelines about when they need to actually approve a change.
Great, that's great. Thank you. And I wanted to also ask you, what are your recommendations for organizations that are thinking about getting into MLOps or just starting the journey, or wanting to start the journey maybe? What would be some of your tips for them?
Yeah, well, look, I'd advise businesses to, there's a concept in software engineering called early optimization. It's an anti-pattern essentially. I wouldn't worry too much about building an ML platform or an MLOps platform, for your first model. Really depends on the use case. But look, I mean, generally speaking, I guess one of the mistakes that I see occasionally is that, a business with one or two machine learning models, have gone all out in ML ops and ML governance. It really depends on the use case, though. I mean, if your first machine learning model is something that's extremely critical to the success of the business, then of course you want to over-invest in its reliance. Look, I've seen a few businesses with one or two machine learning models in production that aren't necessarily core to the business, really sweating this concept of ML ops now that we know what ML ops is, and putting probably far too much effort on the defensive side and not enough yet on the offensive side.
Awesome. That is a great tip. And I forgot to mention before that whenever we do a live webinar, we poll the audience, and we ask them all sorts of things. One of the questions that comes up often is, how many models does your organization have in production? And I got to say, like, having 20 or more is less than 1%, way less than 1% of organizations in Australia, from our polls. So you guys are right up there.
Yeah, look, that's good to hear. As I said, I think we've had an early leg up in that. Data and modeling and prediction have been a part of online wagering, online bookmaking for a very long time. But it's also worthwhile thinking about the long tail of machine learning use cases. So it's not, the first 10 are not necessarily as valuable as the next 10. So sometimes they can be, but typically when you're starting efforts in the space, you try to identify the highest value areas, lowest impact areas, lowest effort areas, and in my mind, the ML offense versus ML defense equation really shifts when you have this kind of bulk of models that, if you're going to build a system, do you get more value from adding an incremental new model, or do you get more value from preventing 20 models from degrading? So there's some, I guess, calculus in this process. But I mean, there is this long tail. I don't know that you can necessarily compare numbers in terms of models between different organizations.
Yeah, very true, very wise. Mia, I think I want to thank you so much for sharing so much of your knowledge and insights and experience with us today. I love your thinking, so clear, so well structured, and it's really refreshing to get your perspectives and your thoughts on everything that we discussed today. So thank you so much for taking the time to share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Felipe. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.